Hello, WNR podcast listeners. Nate Maxson here with you. And for this week's shows, we are dedicating the shows to the We Can't Wrestle podcast Hall of Fame 2024. For those of you that might be new, we actually have our own Hall of Fame here at the WNR Podcast Network. It was started when we just had the We Can't Wrestle podcast, so it is called the We Can't Wrestle Podcast Hall of Fame. Every year, I have a panel of voters, literally people that vote. You know, like some of the people that are voting in our distinguished Hall of Fame. Friends of mine from, as you might know, the Asylum, David Gold, John Majewski, Dave Dynasty is one of our panelists. Brian Davis from the Wrestling Video Vault, of course, Chad Austin, myself, Archie Mitchell, Kyle Army, Mark Brew, lots of the talent here from the WNR Podcast Network. But anyway, all of the people that vote, I appreciate them every single year. And this year, the 2024 class of the Hall of Fame is in the books. And usually there's a nominating process as well to get to the ballot. This year I actually decided to forego the nominating process so that I could get the ballot down to about a 20-person ballot next year. Last year it got a little excessive. We were like up over 30 people on the ballot, and I like to keep it at 20 pretty much. But then the voters that vote get to vote on 8 talents that they would like to be in. I tally those votes. We get our inductions, okay? Just a reminder, if someone is on the ballot for 5 years and doesn't get in, they must go back through the nomination process. So the criteria that I ask people to consider: 10 years plus as a pro, exceptions could be made in a situation like Magnum TA, in-ring ability, promo ability, being of significance to the business, whether as a whole or to a certain promotion or territory, drawing power, and for tag teams, they need to have been a consistent team for at least 1 calendar year. So let's go through the classes that we've had already, for those of you that may be listening for the first time or for those of you that want a refresher. The initial Hall of Fame class was 2020. We inducted Hulk Hogan, Ric Flair, The Undertaker, Bobby Heenan, Andre the Giant, Randy Savage, Vince McMahon Jr., and Steve Austin. And then the class of 2021 was Terry Funk, Dusty Rhodes, Bruno Sammartino, Jerry Lawler, Harley Race, Jim Cornette, Bret Hart, and Lou Thez. The class of 2022, the Road Warriors, Roddy Piper, Shawn Michaels, Gene Okerlund, Fred Blassie, Buddy Rogers, Kurt Hennig, and Paul Heyman. The class of 2023, let me get there here, Nick Bockwinkel, Bruiser Brody, Stu Hart, The Junkyard Dog, The Original Sheik, Gorilla Monsoon, Ted DiBiase, and Sting. So, that being said, the 2024 ballot consisted of Ricky Dozon, Mick Foley. Now, Ricky Dozon has been on the ballot for 5 years, so if he did not get in this year, he has to go back through the nominating process, by the way. Ricky Dozon, Mick Foley, Arn Anderson, The Rock, Bob Backlund, Vader, The Midnight Express, Sherry Martel, Rick Rude, Rick Steamboat, Sergeant Slaughter, John Cena, Rey Mysterio Jr., Antonio Inoki, Chris Jericho, Trish Stratus, Kane, Jimmy Hart, Gorgeous George, the Von Erichs, Eddie Guerrero, and Buddy Rose. And by the votes, the 2024 class of the We Can't Wrestle Podcast Hall of Fame became, congratulations to Ricky Steamboat, Sherry Martel, The Midnight Express, Arn Anderson, Bob Backlund, Rick Rude, the Von Erichs, and John Cena. And now, that being said, we'll get to your particular show you're listening to and that particular conversation about the 2024 We Can't Wrestle Podcast Hall of Fame. All right, everybody, here for this segment of the We Can't Wrestle Podcast Hall of Fame 2024. It is the original triple threat of the We Can't Wrestle Podcast. Nate Maxson, my brother Aron, and Mr. Kyle Army.
Hi, everybody.
Everybody always loves a Kyle Army appearance on the We Can't Wrestle Podcast.
I don't know about that, but
it's like, if you smell.
I have the. What can I say? I'm like John Cena. I show up every once in a while. I'm just like, hey, I kind of want to be in the elimination chamber. All right, John.
Speaking of Cena, he was on the ballot this year. We'll go through the ballot. I'll go through the ballot really quick. We will go through each of the inductees, figure out if any of us voted for them. And then, of course, we will go through who someone voted for that did not get in this year. I would like to say I foregoed the nomination process this year, and the reason I did that was because the ballot was getting too big. I want to keep the ballot at around 20.
Well, it also because Archie just kept putting Bruce Beefcake like over and over again on the list. We're just like, enough. He's not
Jesus
getting in.
Christ. So we tell him no more Beefcake, and he nominates the Disciple. What the fuck, Archie?
And then the Booty Man. Like,
and then the man with no name.
Yeah, I was just gonna say. Then he sent a blank ballot, and we were like, "Who is this?" And he's like, "That's the man with no name."
And Dizzy Hogan. He had nominated Dizzy Hogan as well.
That's when he peaked. So it probably would have been great.
I'm pretty sure that's Hogan now when he stands up.
My actually, you know what? It's funny because I actually like I know we're talking about Beefcake. We're supposed to be talking about the Hall of Fame, but I actually like the weird of him and Johnny.
Him and Johnny Valentine. It's okay. Him and Luscious Johnny.
Him and Luscious Johnny, but they're just so weird. You know, it's just like a weird thing. Yeah. And then with the Dream Team with Valentine, but after that, yeah, but Beefcake's a bust.
Booty bust cake. That's what they should have called him.
This is what happens, Archie, when you don't come on the show. You can't defend yourself.
Yeah, you get slayed, my friend.
Yeah, sorry.
Well, then the ballot this year, and of course, as you all know, the rule is 5 years on the ballot. If you don't make it, you go back through the nomination process. So the only guy that was still on the ballot for 5 years this year was Ricky Dozon. 4-years this year were Mick Foley, Arn Anderson, The Rock, Bob Backlund. On the ballot 3 years this year, Vader, The Midnight Express, Sherry Martel, Rick Rude, Rick Steamboat, Sergeant Slaughter, John Cena. Cena. And then 2 years on the ballot so far, Rey Mysterio Jr., Antonio Inoki, Chris Jericho, Trish Stratus, Kane, Jimmy Hart, Gorgeous George, the Von Erichs, Eddie Guerrero, and Buddy Rose. Now, who got in? Your 2024 class of the We Can't Wrestle Podcast Hall of Fame, based on, I think we have this year we had 19 people vote.
The who's who.
By a landslide, the top 2 vote getters, the number 1 vote getter this year and into the Hall of Fame, Ricky Steamboat. The number 2 vote getter this year into the Hall of Fame, Sherry Martel. Number 3, the Midnight Express. Number 4, Arn Anderson. And of course, we will talk about all these people individually. Number 5, Bob Backlund. Number 6, Rick Rude. Number 7, the Von Erichs. And that's going to be Kerry, David, and Kevin. And number 8 inducted is John Cena, the aforementioned John Cena. So we'll start at the top.
Cena, if you'd like to come on the show and talk about this illustrious,
it can be your first. It can be your first We Can't Wrestle podcast, and it can be your last We Can't Wrestle podcast, John Cena.
Well, I was just going to say, we put you in before WWE, so, I mean...
Yeah. Fair enough. I would like to say, I'm going to pitch a bitch right here at the beginning. 5 years on the ballot. We can't get fucking Ricky Dozon in this Hall of Fame. Back to the nominating process goes Ricky Dozon.
Is he still alive?
No.
I was going to say,
he's been dead since 1964.
Well, I don't know if he has much of a chance of getting in the next few years. I don't know what to say.
Oh, so let's start at the top here. Ricky the Dragon Steamboat. Aaron or Kyle. It's funny. Only one of us that is present voted for Steamboat, and that was Aron. I did not vote for Steamboat this year. Not that he doesn't deserve to be in the Hall of Fame, but my Steamboat vote probably went to fucking Ricky Dozon because I've been trying to get the son of a bitch in my own Hall of Fame for 5 years, and it didn't work.
Ricky. Wrong
Wrong,
Ricky.
wrong Ricky. Not Ricky Morton, not Ricky Steamboat, Ricky Dozon. Kyle, what is? I know you didn't vote for Ricky Steamboat, but your opinion on Ricky Steamboat, obviously deserved Hall of Famer.
Ricky Steamboat is one of those guys. If he had been in the territory 10, 15 years earlier, he would have been the man. But you're talking about a guy that came along when you had so much other talent. If he had been any less of a talent, he would have been forgotten in the mid-card. But the fact that we still, talk about the accomplishments that Ricky Steamboat did. I mean, his match with Flair. I mean, my God, look, name me another guy his age that could come back and have a match at WrestleMania and didn't make an ass out of himself.
Yeah. I mean, in the ring, bell to bell, one of the great workers ever. And I think one of the only, and Aron and I have discussed it before, one of the only things that ever really hindered his career was he was one of those guys that just would up and say, fuck it. And would just, he'd push or no push. He'd just leave he'd leave the promotion, jump back and forth between WWF and WCW or NWA or whatever during the 80s and the 90s. And he just never, I mean, like Mid-Atlantic, obviously, before the wrestling boom, yes, but during the prime years, he never stuck around anywhere long enough to get a sustained, you know what I mean?
He was almost too white meat babyface. That it just, people are like, I think he was the start of, like, him and Flair. It was like, yeah, like, we know that wrestling is what it is, but like we like Flair better. Like, he's more entertaining. I mean, and
Aron, you're the one here that voted for Steamboat. You're the one present that voted for Steamboat. Your opinion on the Dragon, Ricky Steamboat?
Well, the reason I voted for him was because if you look at some of the names on the list that you read off that we needed to vote for or whatever, I think there's guys that are on it that shouldn't go in before him. Like, I look at that sometimes. Like, why are we putting? And I'm not knocking him at all, obviously, but like, why is John Cena going in a Hall of Fame before Ricky Steamboat? You know what I mean?
I'll make my case later, but go ahead.
It's okay. And I'm just saying, like, I look
That's
at
why
it
I
as,
love these shows. That's why I love these shows.
I look at it that aspect, and like, I don't know. To me, there was people that were less deserving than him on the list. He was the one where I was like, you know what? I think he should go in before some of these other people. And I've said it before that I think he should have stayed in one of the areas. Like, I've stated that before, and I've gotten some jive from some of the Facebook followers about it. But I think it's true. Like, he didn't stay anywhere very long.
it's hard for him to build traction anywhere to get a follow.
But just as in ring body of work, you can't deny it, and he's somebody that I think just deserved to be in before some of the other people.
I think a lot of it too was when he had that issue with Vince, when he was like, I don't want to be the Intercontinental Champion and I don't want all this. Like, you're given the ball, like the belt before you're the world title, and it's like, nah, I don't want to do this. When, again, we'll get into it with Cena later, but like, there's so many different aspects to being what a pro wrestler is than just in-ring ability. I mean, because if that wasn't the case, then, I mean, New Japan would be the biggest thing in the world. And I mean, yeah, like I said, WWE has just come back and kicked everyone square in the nuts. They're just like, hey, so fuck everybody else.
Hold our beer. Here we go. Next inductee into the class of 2024, whom Kyle did vote for, and Aron did vote for, and I did not vote for, is sensational Sherry Martel, dare I say, my personal opinion, the greatest female performer in wrestling history. I'm not going to say, I mean, I know there are female wrestlers like that have probably excelled in the ring. But I would say overall, best female performer, my favorite personal female performer in wrestling history.
I don't think Sherry Martel gets as much credit as she needs to. Is not only did she break down the door of what it meant to be a valet, but it was really through her that you started to see on a grand scale, like the guys putting their hands on the female, them getting more into. I mean, to me, she's somebody who broke down that door. Like you had Miss Elizabeth, then you had Sherry Martel, and nobody touched Miss Elizabeth because she was delicate, she was graceful. No one touched Sherry Martel because she beat the fuck out of you.
And that's why I love that you bring that up, because I've always thought that was like the perfect pairings for Randy Savage were those two women, because you have the polar opposites. You have the woman that is the delicate flower that, first of all, obviously in the early days, it was implied that Randy was beating her and shit, like she was scared of him and stuff. And then later on, he became, the character developed into like the protective husband or whatever. And you have the delicate flower of Elizabeth, and then you have Sherry, who is essentially Randy found the female version of himself. You know what I mean? This woman's just as fucking nuts as he is. And they were so good together.
And tell me, at WrestleMania 8, would anybody have cared if they didn't hate Sherry as much as they did for, being just the shit heel? And like, how dare you stab Macho Man in the back when he's down?
Oh, seven.
Yeah, sorry.
No worries.
But yeah, like, what, at that point, what do you do? I mean, you look at that crowd and it's like, oh shit, like, and think right after that, didn't we start to have a women's division? Like, they started to tear down these borders that, like, women like that, it's not just putting matches and fucking brawling panties that, like last night at the Rumble. Like, no, these women can actually go, and they're great competitors. And
Sherry epitomized.
You don't get Charlotte Flair, Sasha Banks without Sherry Martel.
Yeah, Aron.
I've said it a few times. I don't know if on this show or whatever, but she is the female manager equivalent of Bobby Heenan. And when I say that, I mean she made guys better by being with them.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like, you could put somebody with Jimmy Hart or whatever, and it was whatever it was. That guy would have been over whether he was with Jimmy Hart or not. You know what I mean? And then there were some people that they'd put with Jimmy Hart, and it was just whatever. It was flat as a plate of piss or whatever. But you put somebody with Sherry, she either made them better or extended their career. Like, how would I say it? Like Ted DiBiase, I mean, that character could have got kind of stale, there for a little bit, but you put him with Sherry and she puts a new shine on it, gives it a different, like, a different feel. Shawn Michaels' character would have never got as over as it did if he wouldn't have had Sherry Martel with him.
And the smartest thing they did with his initial heel turn was to put him with her. That was the smartest thing they did, because
he probably wouldn't have the career he has right now if he wouldn't have been with Sherry Martel.
No, it gave him a rub, and it gave him a person to act and react to, and a professional who was not going to be selfish and was going to throw herself into the act and put him fucking over. And she did the same thing with Harlem Heat.
Oh, they don't get that much credit. Like that, and that's a shame. Her WCW career doesn't get talked to about as much as what she did in W. It's like, no, there's some real good stuff.
My fried pie with her and fucking Parker, but no, her and Harlem Heat, man. It's funny because I love her and Randy together. That's my favorite pairing that Sherry was in. But I dare say, of all the great pairings she had, her pairing with Harlem Heat is my second favorite behind Savage. I love Sherry and Harlem Heat. They're so awesome together.
I agree. Like I said, I think she's above everybody else, every other woman that's ever really been in the business. And I'm not saying she was in the ring like the technically greatest or whatever. I mean, she wasn't bad in the ring or whatever, but I don't think that was necessary. That's why I kind of compare her to Bobby. It's like, even though Bobby was really, really, really good in the ring, but Bobby was never going to be like, the world heavyweight champion and like the biggest male superstar in the world. And I don't think she was, I don't know if what I'm saying makes sense or not, but like her being a manager, she still got to bump and do her thing and
I always looked at Cher.
make other people look better.
Yeah, I always looked at Cher the same way it was with Bobby, where it was like with Bobby, it was like, why would I ever get in the ring? Like, I'm too smart for that. Why get hurt? I'll pay somebody to bring me the title.
Right.
Like, it doesn't matter if I won it or not. I still got it. I mean, that's pretty much what it's always been. I mean, that was Hogan versus Heenan. It was because again, Aaron, we've had that conversation where Heenan was the biggest heel for Hulk Hogan. It wasn't, Piper. It was been Heenan.
Yeah, Heenan was the thread. He was the thread through the whole thing of Hulkamania, even to the very end when he comes out at Bash at the Beach and Bobby Heenan's the one that says, "But whose side is he on?" And Dusty's like, "Oh, Bobby, what are you?" And Dusty's saying, "You son of a bitch, spoiling it."
Can't believe it.
I can't believe he spoiled it. But that was totally character for Bobby, and yeah. But so the next inductees, none of the three of us voted for them, although they are deserving. But none of present company did cast a vote for these guys this year. It is the Midnight Express, and as the Midnight Express, I am going to say officially it's Bobby Eaton, Stan Lane, and Dennis Condrey. We're just going to induct all three as the Midnight Express. One of the great tag teams of all time. I didn't not vote for them because they don't deserve. There was just someone else I wanted to vote for before them.
Yeah.
And obviously their manager, Mr. Cornette, is already in our Hall of Fame. But Midnight Express, I know it's sacrilege to some people that probably
You're gonna let Norvell in? You're not gonna
Come on in, Norvell. Come on in, Norvell Austin. Come on in.
He's at the beginning of it.
And I know for some people, like the old school people, and Chad Austin would probably say, "Oh, you moron." I actually, personally, I enjoy Bobby and Stan over Bobby and Dennis, although I love Bobby and Dennis.
I'm a big fan of Audacious Barton.
Yeah, we're not fucking. They don't get to fucking jump in on this. I'd let Norvell Austin in, but not Bodacious Bob and what was it? Bodacious Bob and
Bohunk Bart.
Bohunk Bart. Bob Holly can get in on his own, but he's not getting in as a Midnight Express.
It's two different. It's two different teams. I mean, I know it's all Midnight Express, but it's a different. You know what I mean? Like it's a different.
I think
comedy
Midnight
or whatever
Express
with those.
will go down as the last true tag team of the territories. Like you look at a team that maybe they never won traditional championships in like the World Wrestling Federation or anything else, but in a business where it's about giving your body to each other and putting each other over and selling tickets, who else has done it better than the Midnight Express? I mean, tag team wrestling has always been kind of a faux pas thing where it's very niche. And the Midnight Express goes down in a like with the Road Warriors. It goes down with the Von Erichs. They go down with the Freebirds. They go down, like they stand that test of time.
What one of the things I always give all of the and honestly, Condrey of the three wrestlers, the Midnight Express here, Condrey was probably the best promo. He was a good promo because he was, a southern territory pro wrestler that was a singles wrestler and everything. So he had the whole kit and caboodle. But the thing that one of the things that I really enjoy about Midnight Express, and especially going back and watching the Crockett stuff, the JCP stuff, and over and over and over again, obviously, you start to notice little things. And something that I began to notice as time went on, and I'd watch it more and more. I've seen the Cornette promo. I've heard Cornette talk. So you start looking at other things. The promo that Bobby Eaton cuts with his face while Jim Cornette is talking is always really good. Like Bobby Eaton's facial expressions that he makes in the background while Cornette's talking is like the greatest, like non-speaking promo I've ever seen. Like
he's very Silent Bob.
Yeah.
He's very Silent Bob about it. Like, but it's brilliant because, like, you're not going to out-talk Jim Cornette, but you can still get all the eyes on you.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, like so like him and especially him and Stan. I think that's why I like him and Stan too, because they would exchange a glance between each other when Cornette was cutting, saying something about Baby Doll or whatever. They'd exchange a glance between the two of them, like, yeah, she is a fat pig or whatever, just like, I don't know. It's good shit, man. They were so good. And then in the ring, obviously, Aron.
Like you were talking about, like it's two different totally different teams when you put them together. And I'm not gonna say like when I think of the Midnight Express, I don't think of him and Stan, and that's just because of age and like when you're a kid, you had more availability to be able to find tapes of Stan and Bobby together instead of Dennis, and you know what I mean. Like,
right?
There was more super card tapes of the NWA at that time than there was. There's more 87 tapes than there are like 82 tapes. You know what I mean? So I understand that. And when I think of the Midnight Express as two different teams, the first thing that pops into my head is Stan and Bobby, and like Stan introducing Cornette after Cornette introduces them. That type, like,
Mr. James E.
Cornette. Like Ivana Trump's favorite wrestler or whatever. That type of shit. Yeah, that's what I think of. And Stan Lane had that awesome shirt that had like the mascara on it or whatever, and it said I ran into Tammy Faye Baker at the mall. Yeah, just like they were, and I don't know. I enjoy Stan Lane too. I mean, that's just part of it.
All right, inductee number 4 this year. This is a guy that, so far, the top 4 vote getters this year, yours truly did not vote for this year. But this guy, so I'll let you guys take the lead. Aron and Kyle both voted for him. It is AA Arn Anderson.
AA Arn Anderson. If you were going to have like the perfect like loadout for a pro wrestler, is it not Arn Anderson? I mean, you can say what you want to say about Flair, but especially with the Horsemen, it was always like, yeah, but that Arn's going to be there, and you don't fuck with Arn.
Not to toot his own horn, but toot.
Like that was always the feeling that I got with Arn Anderson. It was like, yeah, Flair's tough, but you don't fuck with Arn.
And I'm going to tell you right now, again, like I said, I didn't vote for him this year. Obviously, deserved Hall of Famer. And being honest, does not at all, at least to me, maybe there are circles that talk about it that I'm not in. He does not at all get the credit for what a fantastic promo he was. Like you talk about intensity and a man like the man on a mission promo. You know what I mean? Like So good.
So I wasn't old enough to experience a lot of the Horseman stuff and everything else, and you can go back and watch that, and that's fine. But I have vivid memories of watching WCW with Arn Anderson, and the the whole my God, I must be getting old with age. Ric Flair, get out here!
Yeah.
Like that whole
What a
scene,
goof! What a goof!
you're like, whoa, my God, this is amazing! Like this is. You're just enthralled by it, and you don't realize it at the time just how good of a promo he is, because he didn't take away from the Horsemen. He didn't take away from even Ric Flair.
Mm-hmm.
But it was always Arn Anderson was the guy that was the leader of the Horsemen. He was the grandfather.
The thing about Arn Anderson, he started in 1981. Okay, he debuted in 1981, and he retired in 1996. So that's how many years?
That is 15 years.
Does it feel like Arn Anderson only had a 15-year career?
No.
Feels like Arn Anderson was around forever. And that's what I'm saying. Like, he crammed a lot into 15 years. And I'm saying this because it's going to make sense. And everybody thinks, oh, he's this old guy. Arn Anderson is 66 years old. Okay? He's 66. And when the NWO came in and they were like making fun of Kevin or Arn Anderson about being this old, broken down man, do you know how old Kevin Nash is right now? 65 years old. Nash was 1 year younger than Arn Anderson when he was doing the not my spot, your spot, that spot, your liver spot. Like when they were making fun of him about being this old drunk. It's like, you're 1 year younger than him, you son of a bitch. You know what I mean? But Arn still had that vibe of being this old school veteran because he carried himself that way.
That yes,
And
absolutely.
he's also, in my opinion, somebody that should get talked about more in like the lines when people like talk about like Kurt Angle
Yeah.
or whoever, about these guys that are just like a duck to water when they get in the business and they just picked it up and they were just perfect at it right away. Fucking Arn Anderson was perfect at it right away.
Mm-hmm.
He got it the minute he walked in. The minute, I know he had a little bit of time before he got there, but like when he cut that promo on the beach about that fat Dusty Rhodes and he was coming in and he had the New York Yankees hat on or whatever, and he can't, like, he was perfect right out the chute. And
Go watch.
he's a very he was a very sorry, I'm gonna get on my Arn Anderson kick here. He was always, his entire career, he put the professional wrestling industry before he put himself. And I just and by the time he got to WWE and he was an agent, we're putting John Cena in the Hall of Fame. And I know Arn didn't write the stuff, he didn't write the promos and the storylines, but he wrote the most important thing of John Cena's career. He wrote his fucking in-ring work. That was Arn. Arn drew out everything. He was John Cena's agent. So
where you had
90% of John Cena's career was written by Arn Anderson. You know what I'm saying? So it's like there's a reason.
Well, it's because he gave back. He didn't just, as soon as his time was done, he didn't just say, "All right, I've had enough, brother. I'm gonna." And that's
and
for some
that's
people
what
to
I'm
do
saying.
that, but yeah.
And I just think the guy deserves to be in it. I think he deserves to be in the. I believe he deserves to be in the WWE Hall of Fame by himself, and hopefully it'll eventually happen.
I mean, if we're gonna put Triple H in by himself just to give it to him, like, you have to do it for Arn, because again,
Triple H deserves it too.
I'm
But
not
I'm
saying
just
he
saying,
doesn't, but
but that guy, he's one of the
that's,
greatest tag team wrestlers of all time, and he's one of the, in my opinion, one of the best bell to bell workers that the business ever had. And
I
there
was
were a
just
lot of guys that he made look a lot better than they deserve to be. He's the only guy that ever did anything entertaining with Eric Watts. Like, you get something out of that, you deserve to be in.
yeah.
Just for that, you made Eric Watts look good. Okay,
Toot
you
toot.
get to go in the Hall of Fame.
Is it just me, or anytime I'm watching anything and they're like, "Here comes Eric Watts," I'm like, "Fuck,
Yeah.
fuck!" Like, damn it. Where's the remote?
The next inductee this year, Aron voted for him this year to get in. I voted for him this year to get in. Kyle did not vote for this guy.
Fuck him.
He was 4 years on the ballot this year, so he finally got into the Hall of Fame, and it is Bob Backlund.
Wait, I didn't vote for Bob Backlund.
You did not vote for Bob Backlund.
Why?
Hey, I'll let you do my type of Arn Anderson thing about Bob, because I love Bob Backlund, but I know you're a bigger fan of Bob Backlund than I am. So I'll let you do the whole Bob Backlund rant. I'll just say this. Sorry, and then I'll let you go. He is how do I want to say it? Because I don't want to sound disrespectful when I say it, but late 70s, early 80s, like WWF isn't one of my favorite things in the world. Like, I like it, but I think some of it's kind of boring, and I don't like to watch like Jay Strong, like, you know what I mean? Like, I don't like to watch that. I just think it's boring, some of it, and it's pretty bland in my opinion. Like some of that shit where it's like worth like the silver ropes and all that stuff.
Well,
Some of those guys I see, I'm like, oh my god, this is boring. But
time. I mean,
there's a reason. There's a reason Bob was the guy at that point, because like Bob came on, you're like, all right, shit's gonna go good now. You know what I mean? Like, I know he wasn't the promo to beat all promos, but bell to bell, he was really awesome. And then obviously when he came back, he had that second great run of his career. And that's what I'll say. I just think he was the best of that era. And then when he came back and reinvented himself, it was like, God damn, man, you're so good at this. And I wish he would have. I shouldn't say I even wish. I'm glad he didn't see it at that point. Like, I'm glad he was stubborn and left, because I don't think we would have got that Mr. Backlund character if he would have turned heel on Hogan in '84 or whatever. So, go ahead. That's all I was gonna say.
I do enjoy Bob, like you said, Aron. He's you can tell why he was the star of the the All-Star Wrestling era of WWF/WWF. He had great matches. The promos weren't bad. The promos were Bob, because he was kind of the not shy, but just the meek. He was literally that guy that's like the quiet guy.
He's aloof.
He was also literally that guy that was the quiet guy that's going to tie you in a fucking knot and leave you unconscious in the middle of the ring. He doesn't have to be mean. He doesn't have to be boisterous. He's just going to fuck you up, shoot style in the ring. And then he's like Shawn Michaels, where he has two careers. You know what I mean? And probably the only time I don't enjoy is that last, like, you get into like 80, 82, 83, the last couple of years of his reign, when he started wearing the singlet and he shaved his head, and it got weird. Some of the things got weird with him, but he has like a promo where he's crying, and it's very weird. But anyway, then he comes back in late 92. They try the Okie Dokie Chokey Bokey Bob Backlund. It doesn't work. And he embraced that Mr. Bob Backlund shit. And that is some of the most entertaining stuff in the mid-90s in professional wrestling. Like the King of the Ring 1995, the entire pay-per-view, the most entertaining thing is the Bob Backlund in Philadelphia segments. Like, he is so good as that heel, crazy, demented, aloof, playing chess with fucking Jonathan Taylor Thomas.
Can you believe they're giving the kids in school condominiums And Vince McMahon's like, what? Condominiums? Like, just that shit. And he knew when he got to Mr. Backlund, like, he knew. I'm hoping it was him, but like, I think it was him. Like, he knew the shit to do with that like the odd things to add to it. Like I think he knew adding like those clip-on sunglasses was a funny
Yeah,
thing, you know.
funny as
And they
fuck.
were never down or whatever; they were always up.
I
Like, you know, like he probably saw. I was like, that's super annoying when old dudes do that. I'm gonna do it, you know.
I think
And
one of those things where Kurt Angle owes his entire career to Bob Backlund because he laid out the blueprint of what it means to be that, like, just over annoying, squeaky clean, like, good guy.
Yeah, yeah, and and to that also to be the annoying, squeaky clean, and also like Kurt also did like some oddball, weird, insanity kind of things during his career too. That
Page his head.
he learned from Bob Backlund, I think.
it's like Kevin Nash said when he powerbombed Bob and beat him in 8 seconds or whatever to become the WWF champion. He said Bob Backlund rolled out of the ring and crawled in agony back up the aisle back to the back. Like Nash is like, he didn't have to do that shit. We weren't on
Right.
TV,
But
you
that's the
know.
thing. If
Like,
you're
but
gonna,
he did it because it's like this is what I'm gonna do for the business. And imagine if those guys didn't like Bob Backlund. You know what I
ima-
mean? How
yeah,
much of a living hell they could have made for it. But those guys, and he's not a guy that has the personality that the clique would be like, oh, this guy's fun loving or whatever. But they respected the guy and loved him because he respected the business and just did what was right for everything. And
Yeah,
it's like,
did what was asked of him.
name
yeah,
me any other guy in that locker room at that time that would have gone out there with no huss, no fuss, no bitching, no trying to, that doesn't work for me, and take the power bomb in 8 seconds.
Right.
Who would do that without
Nobody.
to say
Fucking
that there?
fucking Jean Pierre Lafitte wanted to fight about having to do a job. Like, for Christ's sake. And Bob Backlund's like, you know what? I'll go out there. Yeah, I'll job. You want to make a new champion out of this guy? You want to make a star out of this guy? I'll do it.
I'll do it in
I think
8
when
seconds.
Jim Ross talked about wanting to put him in the WWE Hall of Fame and he brought him in and was like, Bob, I think it's time to pull the trigger and put you in the Hall of Fame. And Bob was like, I don't know, man. I think I got another run in me. Like, what? What are you talking about? You're 70 years old. I think I could do it. I want another run.
And he
All
had
right, man.
and you know what? Going back to the 70s and 80s run, he had some as the champion. He had some damn fine matches with Ken Patera.
Oh, yeah, the best matches on the card of any of them,
Yeah,
in my opinion. Other than maybe like a Pedro Morales or whatever, but like, you know what I mean.
He brought that Southern style of like the chain wrestling, the arm, but he was able to put it down and put it into like a New York style where people were like, he didn't do too much where people like, it's kind of like with Rey Mysterio where they didn't just come in and right away they do lucha libre. They like eased you into it and people are like, holy, I've never seen this before.
Like if you go back to that era, I know Bruno was a bigger star, obviously, and a bigger draw, but I'm a bigger Bob Backlund fan. If I'm watching that time than I am a Bruno. There's Bruno Sammartino matches that I've skipped, but I typically don't skip a Bob Backlund match. So
yeah. I you know what? Being honest, I recognize the legend. I recognize how over he was with those people, and I recognize the cultural icon that he is. But I don't watch Bruno Sammartino matches. I think they're boring, and that's no offense. That's no offense. The man was for his time. When he, it's just like I'm not gonna go watch Dory Funk and Jack Briscoe from 1973. I'm not going to watch it. I don't want to watch it. I only have so much time in my life. For people that love it, God bless them. You know, but anyway, we're not talking about those guys. The next guy we're talking about, pretty electric professional wrestler. And another guy that kind of like what Aron was saying about Aron, you think about all this guy fit in a short period of time. Kyle voted for him. Aron voted for him. I did not this year. It is Rick Rude.
He was only 40 years old when he passed away.
Only
That's
40
insane.
years old when he died.
Insane.
Look, I'm just going to tell you guys right now, if you get a chance, please go on YouTube and follow the WWE Vault. There is a awesome documentary about ECW. And in that there's a moment with Rick Rude where you see him like behind the scenes playing a prank on somebody, and it's just very eye opening. But Rick Rude was that guy that it was Gorgeous George perfected. Was really what it was. It was Gorgeous George perfected. It was the epitome of guys wanting to beat the shit out of him. Women thinking that he's the most attractive thing. I mean, fucking Steiner's did it. I mean, everyone's done it.
Yeah, and Rude. And also on top of that, all right. So you talk about the male stripper kind of gigolo gimmick. You know, the what I'd like to have right now is for all you fat, out of shape Philadelphia sweat hogs, et cetera, et cetera.
That's perfect, though. It's
one of the only guys that got a good match out of the Ultimate Warrior. Fantastic heel. And then on top of it, you throw in the WCW run, the later WCW run. He's a goddamn badass. You know what I mean? Like
he had a much better, in my opinion, he had a much better WCW than he did a WWF. Obviously, and
I think he worked better in that system. He just worked better in that system. You know,
and it's because I don't obviously. The company wasn't making a lot of money at that point or whatever, but I think that's a good run of, if you're just going to look at the character and the in-ring of it and everything like that, it's kind of like a shove it up your ass to the WWF. You know what I mean? Like, this is what you could have had if you would have let me be me. You know?
And that's the thing.
He was still doing the Ravishing Rick thing, but he was in WWF. He was he was still a badass, but he wasn't as big of a badass, you know. But like when he got there, it's like if you would have kept me, you would have eventually got the character that I am now.
And I want to say this just real. I want to say this just real quick. Hold on, I want to say this just real quick, and then you can keep going. But I didn't want to forget to say it.
Yeah.
One thing I will say, the only thing I'll say about his WCW run, you know, that night when he comes in as the Halloween Phantom, the first night, you know.
Yeah.
That is the most painfully obvious mystery man in the history of, like, there's you look at it and it's like there's no way, like, you're just like, yeah, that's Rick Rude.
Yeah, and Tony Schiavone even knows it.
He didn't try to not wrestle. He didn't try to not wrestle like Rick Rude or.
But Schiavone even knew it because he like hits the Rude Awakening, and Schiavone's like, yeah, that's Rick Rude. Like before he even takes off the mask or whatever, because Schiavone's like, yeah, fucking blooms off this rose. Let's just say it. But how do I say it? Like I said, he had a much better WCW career than he did WWF, and he had the style for that company of just a badass, hard hitting wrestler. And he got down there, and he showed everybody Hulk Hogan was correct to be afraid of me.
Well, yeah,
because I would have done this shit to him.
Can you imagine if Rick Rude had stuck around? Because I think the problem was that, like, they were still in the we must feed Hogan bad guys.
Hogan wouldn't work with him. Hogan was afraid of Rick Rude.
Well,
he can say what he wants to say, but he was fucking afraid of him. He didn't want to work with him.
Well, I think it's because he knew that the people
Rude would fuck him up.
Well, I mean, maybe it's what needed to happen.
Like, if you think Paul Orndorff was bad, you're gonna get in there with Rick Rude. You know what I mean? Like uh, it was just he was afraid of it, and I don't think that's just what I think. And like I said, I Rick Rude's one of my Nate knows Rick Rude's one of my favorite wrestlers of all time. It's one of my favorite gimmicks of all time, and that's why I voted for him.
He's the only man that, because of the way certain TV outlets, he appeared on all WCW, ECW, and WWF all in the same night in certain markets. Think about
Wild.
that.
It's wild.
Isn't that like?
You ever see that picture of him and Vader when Rude has the gun?
Yeah.
It's like, hey, Hogan, come to WCW.
The next inductees, out of the three of us, only Kyle gave his vote to these gentlemen this year, but they are now in the Hall of Fame. The Von Erichs, David, Kevin, Kerry. I said, and I didn't mean to be disrespectful, but I said I think that they got the movie bump, and that's how they got in. I think that they have been in people that voted this year. Because of the movie, they've been on people's minds. I'm not discarding or discrediting the Von Erichs, but they are one of those where I'll say I don't understand how the Von Erichs are in this Hall of Fame before Gorgeous George and Antonio Inoki and Ricky Dozan. And I'm not saying they don't deserve it, but it's one of those priority things for me. But being of one of our fucking criteria is drawing power, and in the Sportatorium in Texas Stadium for the time that their big run lasted, they were a fucking draw, and so I deny none of that. But anyway, go ahead, Kyle.
I think first off, I've not seen the movie.
So you didn't give him the movie bump?
No, because
I respect that.
Here's the thing: like I know the story. I already know the story. I've seen it. The story told to me 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 ways. I don't need to see. Anyways, but for good and bad, the Von Erichs was the start, I think, of the changing in pro wrestling. Because up until that point, it really wasn't until the Von Erichs got into trouble that people were like, wait a minute, what? Like, that was kind of starting when. But up till that point, tell me that when you talk about pro wrestling, those guys could sell out on their name alone. It didn't matter which one it was.
Yeah.
It didn't matter. All they had to put was Von Erich on the billboard, and people came, and that's drawing power. That speaks to the testament of what they could do in the ring, how they could sell, that people that they believed into it.
Oh yeah, and I totally like the drawing power and then being of significance to a promotion or territory. No denying that either. The entire fucking promotion revolved around those boys for years. And the feuds with obviously the feud with the fucking Freebirds is one of the classic all-time feuds of all. Again, I'm giving them I didn't vote for them, but I'm going to sit here and say they deserve to be in the Hall of Fame, and give the reasons. So I totally agree. And
can you imagine if things had not played out the way it was? If you had a Von Erich go off towards Florida, and then you had a Von Erich go off towards Georgia, and then you had and it's all going on just the name of the Von Erich.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like what the did. It was genius.
I promise you this. Having seen him do heel work in Florida and watching him as a babyface in Texas, had David Von Erich not died, David Von Erich would have been a significant player in the late 80s into the 90s, WWF/WCW. He would have made much more of an impact than Kerry did, even though Kerry had the look. David had the fucking, and I'm not saying Kerry didn't have talent, but David had the fucking talent. David was the perfect one out of all of them. And he would have transcended. He would have been part of the Monday Night Wars.
The Harts were coming from Canada. The Von Erichs were coming from Texas. I mean, that's just what it was. It was.
All right, Aaron.
right.
Do you have anything on the Von Erichs before we move?
All right.
All right.
I did. If I had to pick one, though, I mean, I think Kevin was my favorite one, just because of the work and everything. It's kind of like, I just enjoyed him the best. But you're right about David. He probably would have had a totally different career if he hadn't died. But I'm not gonna say they shouldn't be in either. But like, out of all, and I know people can whatever they want to say about it, but like out of all the territories that you can go back and watch or whatever, that's the one that I'm more like, okay, because it was a lot of wash, rinse, repeat in the Sportatorium, in my opinion.
Please tell me, for the love of God, that I did I vote for Gorgeous Georgia this year?
Let me tell you.
If I didn't,
yes, you did.
Okay, so I was going to say
that's just my thing with him.
at least
it was a lot of wash, rinse, repeat, and if you
I get it.
Took him out of that building, did they really do like I said, David probably would have did, like you said, probably would have did a lot better than everybody else. But after that, if you took him out of that building, did they really, like, I don't know if what I'm saying makes sense.
I get what you're saying. It's kind of like
Kerry Von Erich's WWF is a bust, in my opinion. And I know he had health issues and was missing parts and shit like that. So it is what it is, but it's still like,
But he wasn't around that long to be. He wasn't in the system long enough, I don't think, to.
Because he was a fucking bust. Like if you take Texas out of it, Kerry Von Erich doesn't have a Hall of Fame career, in my opinion.
I'm just saying, people thought Rocky was a bust. People thought John Cena was a bust. Sometimes,
they ended up getting better.
Well, I'm just saying. I mean, health problems probably didn't help, but
I'm just saying.
Anyways, on to the next.
The next and final inductee into the We Can't Wrestle Podcast Hall of Fame this year. I was the one of the three of us that voted for this gent, and it is John Cena. So based on drawing power and a significance to the business or a specific promotion, if I'm going to put Hulk Hogan in, if I'm going to put Steve Austin in, I think I got to put John Cena in, because he was the top guy for fucking 10 years in the biggest wrestling promotion in the world. Who
did he ever really beat?
I'm going to say something right now. First off, this is February 3rd, 2025. I don't fucking buy it, John Cena. I don't think you're fucking retiring. I think this is a fucking long con, my friend. I've watched pro wrestling too many times so I'm saying.
You think he's a Terry Funk, huh?
I think this is all going to lead to him in some way. I don't think this is his last year. I think this last year is going to lead to him turning heel.
That's why they brought his X-Pac, so it would stick. Like, ugh. I want to stick around with her.
But yeah, I have no reservations about casting a vote for John Cena. I say bona fide Hall of Famer. One of the biggest draws in the history of the business. Probably over the course of time sold more T-shirts than Hogan or Austin. Who's main evented more stadium WrestleManias than John Cena? And I know that in his era there was a lot of other talent on the card too. I get it. But I don't know. And he's also a guy that proved me wrong. I didn't want to like him.
Well, because
and then as the years went on, I like him.
He is what I think. Okay, look, I'm going to put it this way. It's not just because this is his last year and stuff. It's for a long time now, I've come to the realization he is the greatest pro wrestler greatest sports entertainer that has ever existed to this point. Name me a gentleman that has done more Make-A-Wish who has never had a report of him being mean, rude, shitty with a fan. Seems like he's a great he has transcended Hollywood at this point. Like, he is beyond rock at this point. He's everything Vince McMahon had as an idea of the perfect superstar.
Mm-hmm. Now, that's a good way to put it too. That term, that WWE term, superstar. He is. You're right. He epitomizes that term that Vince McMahon or whoever coined for WWF wrestlers or WWE wrestlers. Superstar.
He is one of those guys that, like I said again, it's came from that old school. And there's some guys that want to be the best wrestler and ring technician. We've seen some of the best, but here's the thing. Not going to get to talk about Hulk Hogan and his racist bullshit and all that, but the fact was Hulk Hogan wasn't the best ring technician here in America. Neither was Diesel. Neither was Warrior. Yeah. The point is, it's not just about in-ring work. It's about that character taking that person above and beyond. And tell me, they were trying to get Hulk Hogan in movies in the 80s. And he was a flop. Cena.
They had to go and make their own.
Yeah, John's not a bad wrestler, though.
No, I'm not saying he's a bad wrestler. I'm just saying he's everything. Like, he is a great in-ring technician. He knows what to do. He is the perfect WWE star evolved. That's basically what it is. He is a testament to their system because they're doing the same thing with Roman Reigns now. They're doing the same thing with XYZ.
Aron, do you have anything on Cena before we get into our individual ballots to wrap things up here?
Well, I don't disagree with him being a Hall of Fame talent. There were guys that I would have rather vote for before I voted for John. You know what I mean? And sometimes I'm like I don't know. I don't want to say what do I want to say? Sometimes I vote for a guy that I think deserves to be in more, even though I know somebody's not going to vote for him, and I'm not afraid to do the 5 thing and they're off thing or whatever. Because if they don't vote for the guy that I voted for, I want to go ahead and let them know why they should have. If that makes sense. Like, I'm going to tell you why you're wrong, that you didn't vote for this guy, and let me prove that, you know.
Well, that's why this is such a fun exercise, is making your case. You know what I mean?
Like, who was somebody I was thinking of the other day that you said was in this thing, and I'm like, why is this guy in this before somebody else? I can't remember who it was.
Well, I mean, I can look right now and tell you. As much as I like him, okay. As much as I do enjoy him, I beyond some of the people that haven't been on the ballot yet or haven't gotten in yet, I don't know how Kane's on our ballot. I like Kane, but there's lots of people that I would put on a Hall of Fame ballot before Kane that we haven't gotten onto the ballot yet. But anyway, I'm going to go into our individual voting this year, and you guys can each give me, if you want, a little. You don't want to talk too much about them because you might have to say the same thing next year if they get in. But just a little reason why you voted for them, a small reason to get into Hall of Fame this year if they didn't get in. So I'll start with mine. Obviously, I voted for Cena. I voted, obviously, for Ricky Dozan, who now will fall off the ballot. I've said it for 5 years. There is no Japanese wrestling if there is no Ricky Dozan, so he should be in the Hall of Fame.
It's like they stabbed him all over again.
I voted for Eddie Guerrero, one of the greatest professional wrestlers to ever lace the boots. I voted for Sergeant Slaughter. I think Sergeant Slaughter has a historical significance to wrestling. He transcended the business through, the action figures and the G.I. Joe and all that.
That motherfucker killed himself for Hulk Hogan. Think about that.
Yeah.
He committed career suicide for Hulk Hogan.
Yep, because he was never the same after. He never got it back. I want my country back. And your country's like, you're fucking washed up. Go be commissioner. But yeah, Slaughter. I voted for Backlund, obviously, for a myriad of reasons. For like the, I don't know, second or third year in a row, however long he's been on the ballot, I voted for Gorgeous George. You talk about, like we were talking about being of significance. Gorgeous George started that gimmick. Get your filthy hands off of me. I vote. Oh, go ahead.
And just real quick, like when we talk about pro wrestling versus anything else, like UFC, here's the thing: it started with Gorgeous George. Yes, it was. It started way before that as what it is now, and it is becoming what the secret behind pro wrestling. But like he was the first guy to be like, hey, I'm gonna get a little bit of theatrics in this. I'm gonna give you something to make you be like, he's the first.
Yep.
He's the first guy to make people be like, I want to pay to see that guy get his ass kicked. Like, fuck, how dare you come out here and
prance around with your little bobby pins and your.
That's the point. Is it's not about the pro, because you guys have said it both. You don't go back and watch a lot of little stuff because it's boring. You want to see something with story. With that point is like, yeah. It starts with Gorgeous George. He is one of the first.
I voted for Antonio Inoki because of his significance to Japanese wrestling. And I also voted for, I'm just going to say it. I'm not going to say, let's say not Mexico necessarily. But I voted for Rey Mysterio Jr. because at this point, Rey Mysterio Jr. is the greatest luchador in history to wrestle in the United States. There might be some that you could say are greater that just were down in Mexico and never ventured up north here. And that would even be a hard case to make. But
are you talking worldwide?
Yeah,
because if you're talking worldwide, I would almost say Rey Mysterio at this point, because it's just like anybody else, like Mil Moscas or anybody else, like the people, they're dickheads. Like they're not sociable people. Like Ray is. What's the truth?
And Kyle's like, you can't get in because you're a fucking asshole.
Look, there's a reason why there's documentaries now about Ultimate Warrior snapping on fans. Like, you can't.
Anyway. Kyle, your ballot. You voted for. We already discussed.
Can I ask a question on that though, real quick?
Yeah.
Eddie Guerrero, is he a luchador?
No. I don't know. He's a Texan.
I know, but Ray's not from Mexico. Ray's from San Diego or whatever.
Yeah. I don't know. Because didn't Eddie actually his presence was felt more in Japan before the United States than Mexico, wasn't it?
Okay, that's what I'm asking. I'm just asking because I enjoy Eddie Guerrero more than I enjoy Rey Mysterio. That's the only reason I'm asking.
So, Kyle, you voted for Gorgeous George.
Okay, I just was putting that out there. Sorry.
No, that's a good point. I never thought about that. Yeah, I guess I would think of Eddie Guerrero as, I don't think of him as a luchador.
Okay.
Kyle also voted for Arn Anderson, so we already discussed Arn. You voted for Trish Stratus.
You can't be everything you just saw this past weekend. Trish is one of the pillars of that. How can she not be? She bridged that gap.
Mm-hmm. Vader. You cast a vote for Vader.
Go watch his shit in Japan. Just watch stuff in WCW if you need any more convincing of just how bad it was.
Aron and I discussed it. I think the last time we were talking about the PWI 500 last week. My personal of WCW, not the pre Turner Crockett stuff, because there's stuff I like better then. But honest to God, my favorite piece of business that the Ted Turner WCW ever did is Vader and Flair at Starrcade 93. It's the perfect wrestling scenario. Everything about it is perfect.
Yep.
And the credit goes to both of them for that. You cast your vote for the Von Erichs. You also cast a vote for Eddie Guerrero,
Mm-hmm.
Rick Rude, and Sensational Sherry. So you got quite a few into the hall this year. And Aron, your ballot, you voted for Sergeant Slaughter. I assume kind of the same reason I did, unless you had another thing to add to that.
Well, just the body of his career. I don't think he gets enough credit for being like as good of a worker as he actually was. Like, like by the time he got with Hogan or whatever, he was older and slowed down or whatever. But 70s, 80s Slaughter was really good in the ring for a big dude. And um, I'm going to bring this up about another guy we're going to talk about in a little bit. But everybody talks about the Hulkamania shirts and all that shit with merchandising. I think Slaughter was the guy. Like, oh yeah, Hulkamania, it was the first real shirt. It's like, nah, Slaughter was doing that shit before anybody else. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And
You
if
just come to find out that
if
Hulk Hogan.
if Vince if they wouldn't have tried to fuck him out of his GI Joe money, they wouldn't have needed Hogan. I don't think. Like, I don't think Hulk Hogan would have got. He might have got there eventually, but I don't think he would have been Hulk Hogan. You know
That's
what
what
I mean? If Slaughter, there's a lot of things that created Hulk Hogan. Hulk Hogan was a necessity. If Slaughter wouldn't have if they wouldn't have tried to fuck him out of his goddamn GI Joe money, and Jimmy Snuka wouldn't have pumpkin that girl's head off that curb, Hulk Hogan have a different career, man. That's just my opinion.
brother.
You also voted for Steamboat. You voted for
Yes.
Backlund. Another person you voted for that did not get in, Jimmy Hart.
Just his entire body of work. He was awesome in Memphis, obviously, and he had a different character when he got not right away when he got to the WWF, but they kind of changed his character when he got in WWF. I didn't necessarily enjoy the Jimmy Hart character when he was a baby face with like Hogan, but
I gotta
so
tell you,
that might be a low light of his career. But then at the tail end of it, when he was in WCW, there's some things that he doesn't get a lot of credit for, and it's that time in WCW when he was given like Saturday Night and was just given all these guys that nobody gave, like WCW didn't give a shit about. And some of those guys that were on those Saturday nights that he booked are some of the bigger stars in wrestling later on. You know what I mean? So he deserves some credit for that. And he's a hell of a manager, and the music that he contributed. There's a lot of little shit that people don't think about that Jimmy Hart contributed to professional wrestling that I think he deserves credit for, in my opinion.
no, he absolutely does. With that being said, I'm in the process of watching WCW 2000 in my little timeline right now, and I've just gotten to the point of about March with him and Mancow, so kind of on my shit list right now.
I mean, he was just doing what was asked of him. The biggest surprise ever for me wasn't when they did Legends House and they had Pat Patterson come out. Like, obviously that wasn't a surprise to me. The biggest surprise to me was Jimmy Hart wasn't gay. Like, what?
The thing that got me the most is when he
It's the
dropped
biggest surprise to me.
well, he drops his glasses in the oven, and it's like, Jesus Christ, how many people does it take to get this damn thing? Oh shit!
Aron, also you cast a vote for Arn Anderson, Rick Rude, Sherry Martel, and Gorgeous George.
Yeah, and that was the last guy that I was gonna say anything about, obviously, because we already talked about Rude and Sherry and Arn. He's the first guy that understood what the business should be. And I had some silly notes on him or whatever. And this might sound like he's the first guy that I know of that did merchandise, like the Georgie pins and all that shit. Like
Mhm.
he's the first guy that did any of that I know of. He did one of my favorite gimmicks of all time, which was Florida Air. I'll never not love that. Like he's doing the 2 out of 3 falls in New York, and he's like, hold on, and he's got to suck on the box that says Florida Air because he's getting actual good air that he boxed and brought from Florida. Like nobody was doing that shit. You know what I mean? Like this dude was so much smarter than everybody else. And then this might sound dumb or cliche or whatever, but even though it was black and white, to me, Gorgeous George told such a great story with his gimmick and his everything. It's like even though it's black and white, you knew what color it was. Does that make sense?
Because I'm sure he sat and watched his own stuff and was like, "What can I do to make it stand out?" Because
Yeah, because like when you watch them, it's not like you're watching. It's not like you're watching black and white wrestling. It's like even though it's black and white, it's still like looking at it as something like I could see that today. You know what I mean? It's kind of like Buddy was the same way. You know what I mean? Even though a lot of Buddy shit was in black and white, to me, I don't see it as like I'm watching old wrestling. You know, I don't feel like I'm watching wrestling from the 50s.
Oh yeah, Buddy Rogers and Gorgeous George in black and white has much more color than Dory Funk Jr. and Jack Briscoe in color.
Yeah.
Wow, well, waxed all poetic there. So we're gonna wrap it up because your host's bladder is full. But just to get for next year, we'll start the nominations again next year because we will have 7 spots to fill because we have 13 left on the ballot. We win a ballot of 20. So as of right now, on the ballot for next year, 2 guys that are in the Ricky Dozon spot next year, 2 guys who have to make it in or they go back to the nominating process. 5 years on the ballot, Mick Foley and The Rock.
Good sock.
4 years are going to be Vader and Sergeant Slaughter.
okay,
And then the rest of the people are at 3 years now. Still on the ballot. Rey Mysterio Jr., Antonio Inoki, Chris Jericho, Trish Stratus, Kane, Jimmy Hart, Gorgeous George, Eddie Guerrero, and Buddy Rose.
yeah, Kane kind of stands out, doesn't he? Just saying. I probably didn't want to put him in there. Probably,
all right.
Like, well, like Kane. I don't know.
Kane, that's gotta be.
It's gotta be Kane.
So, any parting words, gentlemen, before we sign off for this Hall of Fame episode of the We Can't Wrestle podcast?
Keep your efforts. You gotta poop.
Yep. You guys want? You can follow me on Instagram at Kyle Army Tattoos. I post a lot of funny, weird shit on there. So people tell me are promoting more. I don't know.
Keep promoting whatever. Any you can promote with us anytime. You know that.
Well, I appreciate it. Like I said, it's been an honor, gentlemen, to be on here and talking with you guys.
Yep. And we will see everybody soon. Kyle, it was great to see you tonight. Aron, you still look like yourself. Congratulations. We will see everybody next time around here on the We Can't Wrestle podcast. Thanks, guys.
See you guys.
Yeah.